Welcome to Regent Park TV. I'm Jabin. We're here at Sumach-Shuter Parkette, recently renamed Louis March Park, to cover a story that stirred strong feelings in the neighborhood. In May 2025, Toronto City Council voted to rename the Sumach-Shuter Parkette to Louis March Park, honoring the late activist and founder of the Zero Gun Violence movement. While the renaming has been celebrated by many, others, particularly residents from nearby Trefann Court and Corktown, say they were not consulted in the process. They've organized petitions and are now asking the city to pause the renaming. In this special feature, rptv gives space to some of those voices to explain why they're opposing the change. Our first interview is with Shauna Omar, a Regent Park resident of over 20 years, who says the decision feels like a loss of community agency.
Hi, my name is Shane Omar, and I lived in Regent Park for over 20 plus years. We're here because we have a message to tell Chris Moise, our choice, our park, you took that away, which is so unfair. The city says they always want to be transparent, but they took that away as well. They say they want to unite us as a community. All they do is divide us. We are so disappointed. So, Chris Moise, if you think you're going to have another election and have us vote for you, you know what? You take our choices away, you've proven yourself that you're not a good councillor in our book. Thank you.
Next, we hear from Bill, who has lived on Shuter Street for over 4 decades. He shares the historical background of how the park came to be and why he feels the renaming overlooked local history.
Okay, hi, my name is Bill. I live on Shuter Street and I've lived here for more than 40 years. I know a lot of the history of the neighborhood. In the 1960s, the City of Toronto tried to tear down all the houses and replace it with public housing. And the people who lived here fought back because they weren't getting fair payment for their houses. And the city started to listen, and that was really the first occurrence of citizens actually participating with the city in urban planning. So the area that is now a park was originally a factory. And as a result of the Trefann Court residents opposing the city's plans, it was turned into a park. And so since 1970, it's been called the Sumach-Shuter Parkette. All the people who grew up in the neighborhood, of course, know it as Stinky's Park. That was the nickname they gave it. And so we were quite surprised when all of a sudden Chris Moise says he's going to rename the park. He didn't make any effort to talk to the people who live closest to the park, the local residents. So there was nothing in Chris Moise's newsletters. There was no sign on the park to say that they were thinking about renaming it. No attempt to come to any public meetings. So it's simply one group in Regent Park put together a petition and said, we want to rename the park. There's lots of other parks that could be renamed. The big park in Regent Park is an obvious example, and so we're all mystified why that is not the park to be renamed. So we're just all quite upset, and in fact the petition that Chris Moise used to justify the renaming had about 800 names, and that was over the space of 3 or 4 months. And so the group of people here who were quite upset, we started a petition to say there should be local consultation. And there's almost 1,200 names on our petition, and we got that in less than a month. So we're asking the city to put a pause on the whole process and involve the local community. So that's what we're hoping will happen.
Anne-Marie Boone speaks about her group's efforts to meet with Councillor Moise and how the process unfolded from her point of view.
We met with Chris Moise. A few of us went on July 2nd. Unbeknownst to us did he invite the group who wants this renaming. Like we said, we have no problem with the name they've chosen, but there were also two other parks that were up for debate. So they had Riverdale, the big park in Regent Park where Louis March did most of his work, Stinky's Park as we know it as, which is really called the Sumach-Shuter Parkette, is not a part of Regent Park. It's a part of Trefann Court, Corktown. And when we showed up to the meeting, thinking we're meeting with just Mr. Moise for him to answer our questions, we were approached with the group of Mothers of Peace, probably about 8 of them, who also said that we don't want it named after Louis March because he's black, which is definitely not the truth. So we're trying to pause the renaming. And we were also told that the renaming was done by a random draw. Sorry, not the renaming, but the chosen park, random draw. We've sent an email with all of our questions because we didn't get them answered because it was literally just a debate between them and us. And we have yet to hear from Chris Moise with our questions being answered.
Our next voice is Linda, who was born and raised in the neighborhood. She reflects on the legacy of community resistance and asks why the park's long-standing history wasn't respected.
So I've lived here my whole life, and I think the whole problem is there's been no discussion between the groups, like a meeting here with the other people, and let them know what the real history of Trefann is. As Anne-Marie said, it's not the person who they're naming it after, it's the history of our neighborhood that's in jeopardy. We have a lot of heroes that came in our neighborhood, lived here. When, as Bill mentioned, they stood up against City Hall, they were only going to give us $2,000 for our houses and kicking us all out of the neighborhood to expand Regent Park. The neighbors fought back, and I think what should be noted is most of the people that fought the initial fight were World War II veterans that came and settled in Toronto to get work. My parents and a lot of people had to immigrate from the East Coast to get a job. A lot of the black people moved into Regent Park and into our neighborhood, again, to get work in the wonderful Toronto. And they get here and they're taking their land away. The first thing they did was took our front lawns away from us. Then from there, they said, oh, by the way, we're booting you out with $2,000 to buy a new house. That's the truth. And the neighbors said, well, give us a home for a home. And the city said, nope, this is what expropriation is. You're out of here. They fought back. They managed to make a very diverse community, by the way. We have Tommy Douglas Co-op. We have Jesse's Shelter for Women. We have the Ladies Co-op that is for all genders. And that was put up for women that had problems with their past and a safe place for them to live. We have the Edna Dixon Apartments for the seniors. We have all kinds of, even the Good Shepherd, even though we have problems, we have an AIDS hospice in this neighborhood. And I think another thing that the fight has gone on for years, like we just didn't stop once we saved our houses. We lived through, Jimmy will attest to that, we lived through 2 gun wars in the 90s and then in 2005. We stood up to the gunfight and had community walks and all that. And I think there's still people, I could name hundreds of heroes in Trefann Court alone. We've got this couple, Dorothy and her husband, they tore down the shed where girls were getting raped behind it. We have Barb and Gord. Gord goes in that park every day for the last 30 years and cleans that park because the city wasn't keeping the upkeep on it. We've got people just in general that sit out in their steps, watch what's going on in the neighborhood, let them know the dog walkers are excellent. It's a meeting place. And I think the appropriate thing is the name should go to Regent Park, not into our community where we have a lot of heroes. And again, we also have a lot of sad stories that park could be named after. But I think the general consensus has been lately is that we'll stay neutral and not name it after anybody. Either keep it Shuter Schumack or Trefann Court I'd prefer because that's my history. And that way nobody's insulted, nobody's feelings are being hurt because, well, it should have been my name or whatever. I think that's the best step to take, just to keep it neutral.
And finally, we hear from Carol, whose family has lived in the neighborhood for 4 generations. She shares personal stories and her emotional connection to the park and its name.
I've lived in the neighborhood almost my whole life. I come from a family that's lived in the neighborhood for 4 generations and still does live in the neighborhood. I'm very upset about the process that was engaged upon us as residents. No knowledge of what was going on. It just went right through. And then when we found out a tidbit of it, everybody was up in arms to say, why? Why change it now? It's always been Sumach-Shuter Parkette. And we as residents known it as Stinky's Parkette. My whole life here has been good. We're multicultural, always have been. I just want to say to Chris Moise, you didn't get the facts. You didn't give us a voice. You just pushed ahead and nothing for the people that spent years. I grew up in housing right on Shuter Street. 8 sisters plus myself, 9. And to me, this is a sad thing that is going on, and it shouldn't. We should have a voice. So I'm going to leave it at that. I do get emotional. And Chris, please, anybody out there, get it reopened, please.
Yeah, so we have a petition, and we're hopeful that Councillor Bradford, who was the one voice of sanity who opposed Chris Moise's renaming of the park, we're hoping that Councillor Bradford will take our petition to City Council and let all of City Council know that there's 30% more people who are opposed to this renaming than the ones who wanted to push it through. So that's really our next step.
These voices represent a portion of the community asking for further transparency and meaningful consultations around public space decisions. Residents calling for a pause say they will continue organizing and advocating for local involvement. RPTV will continue to follow updates and community responses.
Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And please follow us on our social media platforms and visit our website.